Mr. Prime Minister, please come and join us. Thank you so much. We are honored that you would spend the time here with us, and I know you have a full agenda of things to take care of. I'd like to start by asking you, as kind of the CEO of the government here, what are your priorities right now as you look at Georgia's development, its economy, its democracy, its integration into Europe, its integration into NATO, challenges with Russia? How do you frame your priorities? What is on your to-do list?
Thank you very much, Kurt. I am very pleased to be here. I would like to thank John McCain Institute and EPRC for organizing this forum. I would like to also thank all the sponsors of this traditional forum, and I'm very glad to be here to see a lot of friends of Georgia, some of them coming back for a while. And this is a really great opportunity for us to discuss where we are and what are our priorities. I would like to thank you for your question. There are, of course, a number of priorities in our agenda. I would say that priority for us, first of all, is not only to keep consistency towards EU and NATO, but to keep the high pace while staying consistent towards our ambitions. And in order to ensure the high pace, we need to implement a number of reforms, political reforms, constitutional reform, introducing more democratic electoral legislation, and also, of course, to implement our 4-point reform agenda, which relates to education, speeding up economic growth, ensuring inclusiveness and open governance, and also the spatial development of the country. And all these together, of course, creates, again, our high priority to ensure high pace towards Europe and NATO, and transforming this country and creating a really Western democracy in this country, in a very challenging neighborhood.
Right. And how do you assess Georgia's progress so far? I mean, Georgia has come a long way, but there is a long way to go. What is your assessment of where Georgia stands in its realization of democratic values, its development of institutions, and so forth?
I think we have very good progress. We can judge based on the last 5 years results, and I think that first of all, we have much better situation in the human rights protection. We have institutionalized human rights protection. It is also reflected in various international rankings. We also have much better judicial system today than we had 5 years ago. We have much more dynamic and inclusive economic growth than we had a couple of years ago, because we had the crisis caused by the Ukraine situation and invasion of Russia to Ukraine. So I think that overall we have association agreement right now. We have an action plan based on the association agreement. We have deep and comprehensive free trade agreement with Europe, and we have visa liberalization, which was one of the biggest achievements of our government. And I think having also the highest growth rate in this region in our economy, I think it's a very good result. I brought with me, by the way, the compiled reports of Georgian international rankings. I would like to leave it to you. And if you look at various international institutions like Heritage Foundation, this Fraser Institute, can I spend a couple of minutes on this? It's about index of economic freedom. We had advanced by from 14th place to 5th place. Intensity of local competition, we opened up several industries for more competition, from 128th place to 78th position in World Economic Forum. This was one of the most problematic areas in the previous administration. This is also a taxation system that was changed, and we moved up in World Economic Forum rankings. This is prevalence of non-tariff barriers, but most importantly, I would say it's ownership rights protection, where we moved from below 130th position to 50s. So it was a major jump, and also I think, which is highly debated right now.
Mm-hmm. I'm reminded of a joke as I'm looking at this. You remember the American comic Groucho Marx? He said, I wouldn't want to be a member of any club that would have me as a member. But this is great achievement for Georgia.
This is judicial independence, which is highly debated today. You can see that it's World Economic Forum ranking. In 2012, we were at 91st position. And we moved up by 28 points to 63rd position. And it's also media freedom, which reflects the level of democracy in this country. It's Reporters Without Borders, and you can see that we were 105th just 5 years ago, and we are number 64 right now. So this is not something we are totally happy about, but of course, this is an important indicator of the progress in this country.
Yeah, well, this is terrific. I'm very impressed that you are paying close attention to these indices and monitoring the progress of the country. Let me ask, since you brought up last media freedom, because that's an issue that has been debated a lot in Georgia, about access to the media, ownership of the media, diversity of voices within the media, including ownership of one of the particular television stations. How do you see that, and where is that going?
Well, first of all, we need to compare what we have today to something what we had in the past. Again, just 5 years ago, we had 3 nationwide broadcasting channels reporting all the same narrative, and it was totally controlled by the central government. Today, we have twice more nationwide channels, 3 times more, actually, if I'm not mistaken, today it's 13, and more than 60 local channels. This is a huge jump if we compare to the situation 5 years ago. But more importantly, we introduced the digital switchover project, where we have ample of frequencies today, and we streamline the process of authorization of the new channels. It only takes 10 the calendar days in order to get permission for broadcasting. And the process is very straightforward. As to the Rustavi channel, you know, I think we all noticed that there is no intervention in the operation of this channel. There was a court decision, which we all respect, of course. Then there was a human rights court decision from Strasbourg, which we may not agree with that, but we also respect the decision. And the channel is operating today despite huge budget indebtedness. We made a decision to let the channel operate and not to freeze their accounts. And this was a decision in order to, again, to show the will of the government to ensure free media environment.
Well, thank you for that. Another area that I've heard a lot about from foreign investors is business climate in Georgia. They particularly have expressed concerns about what they perceive as fairness or unfairness in the court process and their ability to function successfully as international investors. You highlight some of the issues of transparency and climate here, but talk a little bit about how you see the business climate in Georgia and the independence and fairness of the judiciary in dealing with investment issues.
Well, first of all, I never say that we reached a point where we should be completely satisfied. Of course, there is a long way to go, but it's important that during our government, we introduced, with the help of our partners and the United States, first of all, EU, the 3 waves of the judicial reform. Today, we can say that Supreme Council of Justice has much more independence. I would say that The principles of appointing judges is totally different. And of course, we are implementing now the third wave of the legislative reforms, which will make judicial system even more independent and professional. Just very recently, in the frameworks of the Investor Council, which is a special body created with the initiative of EBRD, and where we have all the major financial institutions, together with several ministers, presenting the economic bloc of the cabinet, and also local leading business association leaders. We introduced an initiative to introduce commercial chambers to train the judges to discharge the current public courts from commercial cases, and to build capacity of the judges who will deal with the business cases. And I think that it can change dramatically the situation. I am not saying that we have a perfect judicial system. I understand the rooms and gaps for development, but at the same time, we come from a system which we inherited 5 years ago, where we had more than 350 cases in the Strasbourg court annually. And today we have less than 70, which is comparable to Norway. I'm not saying that we are at the level of Norway in human rights protection, but I'm saying that the trend is extremely positive. And I think that consistency to continue this trend is extremely important to ensure business climate. But overall business environment, if you are asking, which contains, again, many components. And you can see that it's World Economic Forum ranking, we were below 100. And now we are, if I'm not mistaken, 44th position in the world. It is a dramatic, you can see, this is doing business. Actually, I need to say that doing business ranking was improved mostly during the previous administration. This shows that we appreciate achievements of the previous administration. This is macroeconomic environment, World Economic Forum, where we had 137th place 5 years ago, and today we have 40th position, 97 points up. It shows that, overall, this country is improving. You cannot change everything in one moment. As we were talking about accepting diversity, and I'm fully in favor of accepting diversity. And of course, a strong identity based on accepting identity. I think this is a very good expression of where should Georgia be, but at the same time, politicians should encounter the current perceptions in the society. So we cannot attack everything at once. We need to embrace our society and move forward towards developing our society. So, with all due respect, I would like to disagree with some of the assessments of Mr. President when we were evaluating constitutional process. And let me move to that issue, as this is the most important issue in our agenda. You asked about priorities. There is a quest in this society to move towards more democracy. And only Georgian Dream responded to this quest and created constitution via inclusive process of discussions within the Constitutional Commission. And the constitution, draft of the constitution, which is adopted through 2 hearings, is a result of concession. This is a result of concession. This is not perfect, maybe. It cannot make everybody happy, but this is a result of concession. I can list several very important issues in the Constitution. And this is strong parliament. We are moving to a real parliamentary republic. This is very important to understand. This is effective government. This is independent judiciary. This is non-partisan president. Everything is embedded in the new constitution. I can tell you that we made several concessions. This is about, first of all, the major concession is to move to the proportional, fully proportional parliament. And this was not an easy decision. We had very hot discussions within society and also within our majority. And our majority, by the way, consists of 5 different parties. This is not the united, only one Georgia Dream Party. We made a concession lowering 5% threshold for 2020 election. Another concession was to hold one more direct elections for president for 6 years in order to be able to introduce indirect presidential elections together with shifting to proportional. We made a concession to change the so-called bonus system in order to limit the maximum seats in the parliament to 89 seats. And also, if ruling party will not get 76 mandates, we are not entitled to get any bonus. And the bonus itself is limited to 35% of the votes that we will receive. An effective government. It wasn't also easy for Prime Minister to streamline and simplify the procedure of non-confidence to the Prime Minister. Today, according to the new constitution, dismissing Prime Minister is a very simplified process, and I agree to that. It was almost, and it is still almost, until we adopt a new constitution, it's almost impossible to dismiss the Prime Minister because this place was prepared for previous president as he was going to move to prime ministerial position.
Right.
An effective government also means that much higher accountability of the government to parliament, and it is embedded in the constitution too. Independent judiciary, you asked. Now we have, instead of 13 judges, we have 28 judges. And the overall composition of the Supreme Justice Council is totally different, and the decision-making process is different, and Supreme Council is entitled to nominate the judges. It is also a big change. I would also like to say about human rights and generally supporting diversity, rights to physical integrity, gender equality, rights of people with disabilities, independence of public broadcaster, internet accessibility, entrepreneurial freedom, right to good governance. Everything is embedded in the current constitution, and most importantly in the transitional clauses we included Euro-Atlantic aspiration as the major strategic line for our foreign policy aspirations. I think this constitution we need to adopt. It may not again make happy opposition. And let's look at the opposition. Again, with all respect to all the individuals, this is a political agenda to oppose anything that will be proposed from the government. This is an unfortunate reality we have right now. And very unfortunately, we need to face this reality, and we need to consistently promote this constitution, because there is a risk of failure to live with the existing constitution forever. And I need to say that the fact itself that we have a constitutional majority today is still a response of the society to authoritarian rule Georgia had 5 years ago. The first parliament in 2012 with constitutional majority unfortunately failed to adopt new constitution, and the second parliament that we have today, it also has the constitutional majority. And I'm repeating, this is a response to the previous administration we had. We will probably, for a long time, we will not have a constitutional majority in our parliament. This is a historic chance, and unfortunately, we are risking, through undercutting our efforts, to adopt the document which is, by all international expert opinions, including the Venice Commission opinion, is a democratic constitution with proper balances between different institutions. We are risking to live with the existing constitution. I am, of course, not intimidating anyone, and this is not a blackmailing from our side. I know exactly what is the situation in our majority, and I cannot risk splitting the majority, because we need this majority in order to go forward with very, very important reform agenda of our country. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that very rich explanation. I hope it's, if you don't mind, if I'll ask a couple questions as follow-up as well, too. But the first is, of course, the previous government lost the election, and there was a peaceful change of power. So I know you just referred to them as an authoritarian government, but you did have a peaceful change of power under the previous constitution. So my question would be, what is it about the current constitution that doesn't work? You know, what needs to be fixed?
Well, there are a lot of, I think, distortions in the current constitution, imbalances among various institutions. We have a very strong executive government. The parliament is not as strong as it should be in the parliamentary republic. There are a lot of duplications in the functions between presidential and prime ministerial role, etc., etc. And also, you know, this majoritarian system. We need to agree that we need to change it. This is why we are proposing this change. I think it will be a historical change and one of the most important legacies of our government to shift to the fully proportional system. Now, you know, we can debate about how authoritarian was the previous administration. I remember all the process. I was an MP in 2004 when UNM introduced, right after revolution, first changes to the constitution, strengthening the prime ministerial role when we had still the presidential republic. I was the only MP in that government in my party who opposed this change. And because it was a huge distortion in the principles, basic principles of constitutional legislation and the balance of power. Then I remember the whole process, and it's important to say that in the period between 2004 and 2012, I was a private businessman, and of course I know everything what was going on in this country. And I remember, of course, I was closely watching politics all the time. And I remember a coalition of 8 parties during Saakashvili time, which was created in order to change the electoral legislation. And I remember what were the methods, and let me not elaborate here about the details of these methods used by UNM in order to dissolve the coalition of the 8 parties. Then we had coalition of 6 parties, and it was the last hope of the society who had a very strong quest to establish democracy in this country. And again, with dirty methods, this coalition of 6 parties was dissolved by active engagement of the UNM. And then you are calling the peaceful transition of power. I'm sorry, but what is peaceful transmission of power? I would not call 2012 elections and the whole pre-election process peaceful. It was intimidation, arresting, monitoring all opposition members. Do we have anything like this here today? Of course, again, I'm saying that we are not we have not reached the state where we should be relaxed and happy. But there is a tremendous change that happened in this country during these years. And of course, we need support of our friends in order to keep this consistency towards bringing more democracy, bringing more diversity. And believe me, this constitution will bring much more democracy in this country.
Great. Thank you. I have one more question on this and then one international question. But what was the thought process in your government between amending the current constitution, because you've identified some areas, for instance, the relative power of the president versus the relative power of the parliament. Why not amend the previous constitution? Why produce an entirely new one?
Well, you can call it entirely a new constitution or amended constitution. I don't see big difference. There are a number of list of changes that we are introducing to the current constitution. We can call it a new constitution, but there were several important issues that were amended in the existing constitution. I don't see principal difference there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And my final question for you, Prime Minister, same as I asked the President, when you look at the United States, at Europe, at NATO, and you look at Georgia's aspirations and integration into your Atlantic institutions, what advice do you have for your international partners? What should we be doing?
For us, it's extremely important to have very strong European Union supporting value-based aspirations of countries like Georgia, like Ukraine, like Moldova. It is extremely important for us to have strong United States with very strong engagement in ensuring peace and stability in our region. And it is extremely important to have strong NATO, which is the only institutional mechanism existing right now for the civilized liberal world in order to ensure peace and stability in this region. This is why for us it is extremely important to ask our friends and allies to help Georgia, as I said in the beginning, not only to keep consistency, but also to keep pace of this reform and to help us also to keep this pace. Without United States help during these 26 years of regaining independence, it would have been absolutely impossible to be in the position where we are right now. Without the help of the friends and allies of European Union, our friends, it would have been impossible to sustain existence, the very existence of the country which is called Georgia. Despite the challenges we have and despite territorial integrity violation, occupation, daily threats, the country is consolidated around this goal to develop country, to move and not to concede in our foreign policy aspirations and in our territorial integrity. It's very important to understand that Georgia is no longer a post-Soviet country. We are an Eastern European country with democracy and with aspirations to get even closer and to become a full member of NATO and full member of the European Union. There we need your help to consolidate opinions and positions of countries to reach the consensus over European prospects of Georgia and also membership in NATO. This is very important for us. This is existentially important for us. Right. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much. You are here among many, many friends who are great supporters of Georgia, great believers in Georgia's values, its aspirations, its identity as a European country. You are a strong and passionate defender of your country. I want to thank you for spending time with us today. Thank you for your message. And please join me in thanking the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll keep that briefing paper as well too. Thank you, Prime Minister. I'd like now to call to the podium to moderate former UK ambassador to the Republic of Georgia, Alexandra Hall. She is going to preside over a panel discussion dealing with some of these very interesting political dynamics and changes going on. In order to do that, we're going to have to reset the stage for a few minutes. So stand in place, but don't disappear, and we'll be resuming again in about 5 minutes. So thank you.